Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to TrackTime, your new favorite Formula One show. I'm your host, Michael Pales, and today we're going to be talking about the Australian Grand Prix, the new regulations, how that's impacted it. We're going to be talking about my predictions for the Australian Grand Prix, see how I did. I did not do well. And then going into my predictions for the Chinese Grand Prix, which is coming up this weekend. So, as we get into it, we're going to start off just kind of with a chat as I get my clock up. We're going to kind of just talk and break down some of the things that happen. And I'll obviously list out some of the things. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the Australian Grand Prix obviously happened this past week, and it was very interesting. We started off in the first three practices kind of like dipping our toe in. It was very much so you could tell that certain teams weren't revealing their full force and really how fast they were, and then came qualifying, and qualifying went crazy. Qualifying had some crazy things. We had a lot of mechanical issues in qualifying, but this kind of resulted in a lot of there were 3 drivers that did not qualify as a result of crashes and things like that. Biggest one was Max Verstappen. His MGUK unit, which is essentially the unit that is able to charge the battery for the drivers, it ended up locking up on him, and he crashed the car. And very unlike Max, but it wasn't his fault. It was the car. It was a car issue. It was a mechanical issue. And so we saw so many mechanical issues throughout the race. I mean, Carlos Sainz was unable to qualify. You had, I believe, there was another mechanical issue with Gabriel Bortoleto with Q3, where his car didn't make it to his pit box during at the end of Q2, and so he just wasn't able to qualify beyond P10. So regardless of that, I think the biggest thing that we took away from qualifying is, holy crap, the Mercedes are fast. The Mercedes are so quick. I mean, George finished a full 0.8 ahead of Isaac Hadjar, who was third, and Isaac Hadjar drove fantastic. Let me just say, his race result was not a result of his fault. It was a mechanical issue, which sucks because he was driving not necessarily the best in that case, but he drove a great job in terms of qualifying, but it doesn't help when the Ferraris are like Usain Bolt off the blocks and just sped away like it was no one's business. But I will say, after qualifying, I was extremely worried about the race. I wasn't sure what was going to happen, or if it was just going to be, Mercedes is the most dominant team and they're just going to run away with it. And now I'll talk a bit about the race. The qualifying was interesting, but beyond the situation of, okay, here's kind of where teams fell, really wasn't super major beyond the crashes and the people that couldn't make it. But the race results are as follows. I'm going to go reverse order, so these are going to be like the back to front. So Nico Hülkenberg did not make it to the start. His car died on him, and because of mechanical issue, so he did not start, which, if you know my predictions, we'll talk about that later. Then Oscar Piastri crashing on not even the formation lap, but I'm not exactly sure what the proper terminology is for it, but Oscar Piastri did not make it to the grid for the formation lap. He crashed, and man, the Australian curse is truly something that people question, or people might wonder, hey, is this actually real? Well, more often than not, the Aussies have really bad luck in Australia and Melbourne. And then the next person who actually did start the race was Isaac Hadjar, who was able to start off the race, and then did not finish. His car had a mechanical issue, he dies, and then that's what cued the first VSC, which is a virtual safety car. Essentially, what a virtual safety car is, for those who are unaware, is it is a way of nullifying racing, so people cannot pass in during the virtual safety car. They must lower their speed beyond a certain threshold, but it doesn't bunch up the pack the same way that a safety car would, because they trust the drivers to be aware and avoid the things. But a safety car will bunch them up and guide them where they're supposed to be going. Then you had Valtteri Bottas, Fernando Alonso, and Lance Stroll. So Valtteri had the second virtual safety car. His car died on him. Cadillac performed, in my opinion, well, because they did have an actual finisher, which isn't always for a first team starting off, especially with the fact that they are a works team, but they're a customer team of Ferrari, first year in Formula One. The fact that they had a finisher was fantastic, especially when you look at the other two. But Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, Aston Martin could not catch a break. They did not do well. Lance Stroll didn't even qualify as having participated in the race because he took so many laps. So essentially what happened was Fernando Alonso went to the pit, got brought back into the pit, went back out, did more data and driving, got back in. So essentially there was a couple of times where these drivers were out and then came back and then were out again. Lance Stroll ended up finishing 15 laps off of the lead, so he didn't even qualify as a contest. So if you look at the driver standings, he's not even on there because he did not count as a qualification. Or classified, not classified, that's what it said. Okay, then of the actual finishers we have, the first one was Sergio Perez. He drove well. He beat out Valtteri in pure pace during qualifying and honestly looked exceptional in the hardware he has. He's understand that he is stuck with not good equipment. Valtteri, I think, one, obviously a mechanical issue. Two, he didn't perform very well. However, what I will say is that Valtteri is an honorary Aussie, and man, the Australians cannot catch a break at their home Grand Prix. But Checo Perez performed very well for his first race back, and was able to hit the milestone of, hey, Cadillac finished their first race. So Cadillac, if you're a fan of Cadillac, you're in it for the long haul. Understand that this is not the way this team is going to operate the rest of their time. They're going to get there. It just is going to take some time. Okay, then in 15th, we had Carlos Sainz. Carlos had a mechanical issue in FP3, was not able to qualify, started at the back of the grid, and was able to work his way back up to 15th. But this Williams is not very quick. For the fact that they have a Mercedes strapped to the back of it, and I'll get to it, but the Mercedes seem to be a rocket ship, it's mildly worrying that Carlos was so far back. But also, just a reminder, Carlos did not succeed a lot last season early on in the season. He struggled. He struggled a lot in the first few races with Williams, and obviously that's getting to know a team, getting to know the car. And Alex Albon wasn't much better in terms of the pace, but Carlos really felt like he just got unlucky. And the hard thing is that Carlos really put his money and hedged his bet on, hey, Williams is going to be the team that's best here when he was on the open market. So then next is Franco Colapinto, who did not have a very good drive, but had one of the greatest saves I've ever seen in my life. He almost rammed into the back of Liam Lawson because Liam Lawson dropped like a rock in water. Liam Lawson did not get off the line, which Liam Lawson finished just above Franco Colapinto, but he dropped like a rock. He was starting, I believe, in like 11th or 12th. He might have made it to Q1. Did he make it to Q1? Yes, Liam Lawson qualified 8th and dropped down to 18th. So with that, Franco Colapinto had to dodge out of the way, nearly crashes into the back of Liam Lawson. So just, you saw an elite level of defense there by Franco Colapinto, but clearly not on the pace, and he was not able to keep up with his teammate in Pierre Gasly. Next to that finish was Liam Lawson. Liam Lawson had a really rough start to the race and kind of was just clawing back from there. And right now the V-Carb looks like probably the second best, if not the best, car of the middle of the pack. And it's hard when you get out-qualified and outraced by your rookie teammate. So, and especially since Isaac Hadjar probably would have succeeded better in this race, Liam is showing that Red Bull made the right decision in who they brought up. Next was Alexander Albon. Albon had a pretty quiet race. He just kind of was there, didn't finish in the points, was kind of just stuck behind the teams. And again, the pace was not there for these Mercedes power unit teams. Like, the customer teams and the middle pack teams are Alpine and are Williams, and they're just not getting the most out of this car. And so it's slightly concerning that this is the case when, this power unit clearly has the capacity to be one of the best power units in Formula One. Next up is Esteban Ocon, who finished in 11th. He was stuck behind Pierre Gasly. There was a kind of back and forth battle, which was awesome to see in terms of overtakes and action. And it was very interesting, but regardless, Esteban finished out of the points. Pierre was able to notch that one championship point for Alpine and also for himself in the Drivers' Championship. Then Gabriel Bortoleto, apologies. Gabriel Bortoleto performed very well. He qualified 10th, finished 9th, honestly succeeded very well, and I think that Gabriel Bortoleto is continuing to show that he is an exceptional driver, and this Audi power unit looks good for a team that's building this being their first year of constructing their own power unit. But also, again, they are Kicksauber. They were Stake F1 team Kicksauber, and they took over and were able to shift and now are Audi, and so they had more of a base than, say, Cadillac did. Next up was Arvid Lindblad, who, oh my goodness, had such an astounding first race. He performed exceptionally. He was running in P3 at one point. I have nothing but props for Arvid Lindblad. Next was Ollie Behrman. Ollie Behrman was successful in the sense of him getting a pit in the second BSC and was just had an exceptional drive. Very, very well handled. He was able to defend against Arvid Lindblad. Defended against Max for a decent amount of time, but then Max Verstappen caught up, and yeah, there wasn't much he could do. Then Max Verstappen finished in 6th and was defended by Lando Norris for, I want to say, 10 or 12 laps. Lando had a masterclass in terms of defense against Max Verstappen. Next, we had Lewis Hamilton, who finished in 4th place, Charles Leclerc, Kimi Antonelli, and George Russell. The reason I kind of rushed through those last 4 is that these new regulations, I'm mixed on my feelings in terms of these new regulations, because drivers should not be slowing down in the straights. There should not be a moment where they are flat out and their car just dies. They lose power because of the power unit, because it's a 50-50 split now. These are true hybrid engines, and unlike what have been the past regulations, which was an 80-20, it promotes overtakes because you have overtake mode, which gives you extra power, and you have the energy deployment, where you're able to, if you manage your energy properly, you're going to get a great boost. But we're not watching Formula 1 to watch Formula E. Like, that's what's happening here, is that if you want fast action, crazy overtakes, all this stuff, go watch Formula E. Formula E is just as faster paced, is crazy. There is great talent there. But Formula 1 is meant to be a formula series. It's meant to be engine-based. It's meant to be driving, and these drivers, yes, this management is a new form of management, but there's no world in which drivers should be driving in a flat-out straight and lose power because, they don't have the battery for it. Like, this is showing that Formula 1's trying to go under the guise and saying, hey, we are trying to be more natural and understanding that we're trying to be anti-pollution, when they are constantly going around in so many different areas, shipping everything and all the stuff they have to do. But sure, it made for a really entertaining first couple laps, because you had a battle between George Russell and Charles Leclerc, because both the Ferraris launched off the line like crazy. But the truth is that this is not what Formula 1 fans want to see. Sure, it's fun action, it's exciting to watch, but when you're watching qualifying and you're watching the driver go flat out, and they call it super clipping because they want to make it sound interesting, but it's just not. These are drivers who want to drive. That is what they do. That is what they're born to do. That's what they've been doing their entire lives. And then all of a sudden they're put into a series where all they have to do is, press a button, I go faster, and I pass the person. Sure, some driving plays a factor, but because someone has more energy than me, they pass me. Like, that's not what we're expecting or wanting to see as Formula 1 fans. We want to see true racing. We want to see these drivers pushing it to the absolute limit and drive. But what they're doing right now is they're pressing a button that says, "Brr, my F1 car goes faster than yours." And it's difficult because obviously Formula Series, you want to see cars faster. And Mercedes, props to them on making such a fast car. And here's the thing. I'm not complaining about how fast Mercedes is. I'm complaining about the regulations themselves, because if the regulations were not the 50-50 split, Max Verstappen would not have crashed in the qualifying, because the MGUK, which is the thing that charges the battery, is the thing that caused him to crash. And I love the active arrow. I think it's great. I think it's very interesting. The overtake mode clearly speeds them up and is an actual advantage in terms of being able to get wheel-to-wheel action. But when are we going to look at this and say, hey, is this actually what we want to be pushing in terms of Formula One? Because, oh, they went from an 80-20 split to a 50-50 split. What's next? 30-70? By the end of, if they keep moving the way they're moving, we're going to be seeing Formula One become Formula E by the end of by the end of this decade. Not this decade, but the next decade. Because this is not where Formula One is going. Formula One needs to recognize that, hey, this is not what it's meant to be. It's meant to be pushing cars to the absolute limit and drivers pushing it to the absolute limit. And that just has not been what's been going on in these regs. And I'm excited to talk about my predictions and how poorly I did on my predictions as we get to Q3, where I go over my Melbourne predictions. Or sorry, Q2. Or no, this is Sector 2. There we go. We got there. The verbiage is correct. Okay. So, obviously, my Melbourne predictions. Disaster class Aston Martin, I would notch that in a correct prediction category because Aston Martin drove. One, Lance Stroll did not classify. They are literally bottom of the Drivers' Championship because they only had one driver finish the race and qualify as a driver on the track. So Aston Martin absolutely was a disaster class, but not necessarily to their own faults. They have been trying their best, but at the end of the day, Aston Martin performed extremely poorly. The Honda engine is clearly not it, and Adrian Newey has been putting a lot of the blame on the Honda engine. So, but yeah, disaster class for Aston Martin. Alonso was able to almost put it into Q2, but that was solely because of three people who did not either participate or finish. And honestly, Kimi Antonelli might not have even gotten a lap in if not for the Max crash, because it red flagged the session and was able to give the Mercedes enough time. So, yeah, just absolute disaster class. Really, the only other person that could, quote, have an argument for disaster class might be Williams. But even then, Williams still was able to put laps up and was able to succeed and was able to finish the race within pace. I can't count that as a disaster class. So in that way, also, just for an explanation of the disaster class category, it can be a driver or a team. If it's a team, I'm expecting both of the drivers perform poorly and the team as a whole perform poorly. If I pick a driver, I think that driver is just not going to be as successful at the next track that we're going to be seeing. So that then gets me into my masterclass, Lewis Hamilton. This one it's questionable because masterclass to me is, hey, they performed above what they normally are capable of. And obviously, we did not know what we were getting into or performed above what their normal standard is. They put in a masterclass. They qualified high. They finished high. Even if they qualified low and finished high, it can still be a masterclass. I think Lewis might have just been a class. Lewis did not perform the best in qualifying. He finished P7, which he knew that the car wasn't there for him, and he thinks he could have gotten better. And then, realistically, it's not even Lewis's fault why they performed poorly. It truly falls on Ferrari and their strategy, because they didn't pit them in the first VSC, and they weren't able to pit them in the second VSC. So you just gave the win to Mercedes as a result of strategy. And Ferrari essentially screwed Lewis out of possibly his first podium, because if he had gotten pitted right or properly, there's a possibility he defends Kimi and is able to stay on podium. So I cannot give Lewis the master class qualification. But I will say this was a spectacular drive, and it looked like the GOAT Lewis Hamilton, because he has not been there as of late, but man, did he look like it this past Sunday. Or Saturday for me, because of time zones. Next up is point surprise. Well, apparently it wasn't a surprise to anyone, because Arvid Lindblad got up in there at P8. And I think that Arvid showed truly that he is an exceptional driver. Like an exceptional driver. And part of it might be because he's coming into a regulation and he did not drive the previous regulation. Everything he is learning is already new, but it's not like he's having to unlearn old things. He is just strictly learning, hey, this is how I do. Also, partially might be because, his manager is an Formula E world champion. But regardless, Arvid drove out of his mind. Like, I cannot sing the praises more of this rookie. He not only outqualified his teammate, he was able to get into Q3, qualify, I believe, P7. He qualified. I'm double checking real fast. No, sorry, P9. He did not outqualify his teammate. His teammate outqualified him, but he qualified P9. He was able to have a lightning start and was able to get himself up to P3 at one point and was able to finish in the points in P8. He outscored his teammate. He was able to get into the points, and it was great. Also, just another note, point surprise means one of the midfield teams. I'm not counting McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull, or Mercedes. Those cannot be point surprise. Any of the other 7 teams are eligible for a point surprise in terms of their drivers. Now, I might not be able to put Arvid. I'm not going to go back to back. I can't keep picking the same guy and just be like, yeah, this is going to be it. So, in that case, Arvid Lindblad is no longer eligible for point surprise the next couple races. But we'll get to that. But Arvid, I cannot sing any more praises about this kid. This kid is going to be so exceptional. And I pray that he either gets out of the Red Bull program, because this kid is so talented. Isaac Hadjar is going to get 1 season, and if he's not competing with Max, he's going to get cut. And it sucks to say, but that's just the case. And this could be a very interesting driver lineup come next year, depending on how everything finishes out. But Arvid Lindblad, I was correct on points surprise. Next up. Okay. First lap hero. Who gained the most positions in the first lap? I predicted Nico Hülkenberg. And I believe in the first lap, it was either Arvid Lindblad or Max Verstappen. I think it might have been Arvid. Nico didn't even start the race. Like, I got screwed. Like, this prediction, it's not Nico's fault. It's not Nico Hülkenberg's fault, because he didn't even get to the racetrack. But man, when I saw that, I got home to watch the race. I'm sitting there and I'm like, where's Hülkenberg? What? And then they're like, he didn't even get there because of mechanical issues. I'm like, there goes my prediction. Also, just to note, I did add another category. We will be talking about first lap 0, who I think is going to lose the most points or lose the most positions in the first lap. But we'll get to that in the next predictions. Next up is team of the week. I predicted Ferrari. It was not Ferrari. And I'm gonna have to change the rules a bit in terms of how I pick team of the week. I did not quantify that I was going to change those things for the next week, but for right now, we're doing great. Ferrari did not score high enough, but what I am now making is called the anti-Mercedes rule, because Mercedes built a rocket ship, and unless some crazy shenanigans happen, more than likely the Mercs are going to win. So I am making a executive decision. After this Chinese Grand Prix, because I believe I predicted Mercedes to finish first in the Chinese Grand Prix for Team of the Week. Team of the Week will be, what team do I think is going to finish with the most points that is not Mercedes or performed better than they normally would? As in, did Charles win a race? Like, if we see a Hamilton or a Charles win, then Ferrari would win Team of the Week. Essentially, if a team exceeds their expectations, they will be able to be eligible for Team of the Week. I will not be picking Mercedes, because Mercedes is going to probably win most of the races. Next slide. Pole position. Your boy was right. This was, he was eight tenths off of the Ferrari, or off of Isaac Hadjar. Like, this Mercedes is so fast and clean air, and when he's not having to battle with someone, it is a rocket ship. Like, I swear, they strapped the Falcon 9 to the back of their Mercedes and said, cargo burr, and just zoomed. Like, George Russell is probably going to win this George Russell is more than likely going to win the Drivers' Championship. I would find it hard not to predict that. Obviously, there is some hope for anyone who believes that the Mercs might get kneecapped or handicapped with the updated rules where they'll be able to measure the essentially ambient compression ratio, not at adjusted ambient temperature, but also at like 130 Celsius. So there's a world in which we might see the Mercedes get back to the level of the rest of the pack, but at the end of the day, George Russell performed out of his mind, and he drove a spectacular lap around Albert Park. Next up is my podium lock. I did not lock anything. In P3, I had Max Verstappen. Now, obviously, I want to talk about Max a little bit. Max has been vocal about not liking these new regulations. He is very displeased with how they are functioning and how they're driving. He doesn't like it. And, I mean, he had a crash where he nearly broke his wrist the way that he was holding onto his steering wheel. And that was as a result of a mechanical thing that was a part of his car that he had no control over. And that's part of the regulations. This is their livelihood. This is what they want to do. And the hard thing is Max Verstappen is someone who does not seem loyal or need Formula One the same way other drivers might. And as a result of that, I think we might see possibly, if there's no changes to the regulations, an early career departure for Max Verstappen. And so, sadly, he did not finish P3. He finished P6 behind Lando Norris. Lando held him off, and also, I mean, Max had a great drive. Let me tell you, Max had a great drive. He started in, I think, P19 or 18. Started the race P19 or 18 and finished P6, which was a great race, but clearly Max can tell, hey, the Red Bull is the fourth fastest car, because he puts the McLarens over them, and then he puts the Ferraris and then the Mercedes. And so it's hard to hear Max be so outspoken and so against what's happening, but he did not finish P3, so I was incorrect on that podium lock. This is where I let myself talk myself out of the correct opinion. I picked George Russell P2. Why did I not listen to my logic? Why did I not listen to the haters and recognize that George Russell is probably going to win almost every race the rest of the season? He really looks like the only competition he has is going to be Kimi Antonelli going forward, and as a result of that, there's only so much that we're going to be able to see in terms of parity, in terms of the way that this race is going. I truly am hoping and biding time that we are going to see a major change in the performance of the Mercedes after the June 1st change to the measuring of the compression ratios. And also, the other thing is that I don't even think was the main key. The Mercedes just understand their engine more steadily than, say, McLaren, than, say, Alpine, than, say, Williams. And McLaren was complaining about how, Mercedes isn't sharing that much information, but it's like, yeah, you just won 2 Constructors' Championships over them with their power unit. So I think that this might be Mercedes getting back at McLaren and the other customer teams. And then finally, my other prediction for podium lock was, of course, Sir Lewis Hamilton. Lewis had a great race. Let me tell you, Lewis, I think, got screwed by Ferrari strategy, nearly caught up to his teammate. He said if he had 5 or 6 more laps, he would have absolutely caught Charles Leclerc. But I think that Lewis might understand this car more and be able to extract more out of the car than Charles could. And I think that it was very exciting to see, but I am worried about how these cars are going to perform in China. And I'll talk about that in the next section when I do my China predictions. There it is. I need some water. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. But as I was saying, I was very incorrect. The actual podium was George Russell P1, Kimi Antonelli P2, and Charles Leclerc P3. What I will say about Kimi Antonelli showed some major resilience as a early young driver. It's what you want to see in terms of great drivers, is the ability to wash it, be able to not forget what just happened, but be able to move on from things. That's something hard you see in young drivers and young people, is they can't necessarily move on as easily as some people can. And so he crashed in FP3. His mechanics did one heck of a job of getting him back out to track. He puts it on P2, and then he puts his car in P2 on the front row, and then proceeds to, yes, have a bad start and drop down to P7, but finishes P2 and is currently second in the Drivers' Championship. And I think Kimi might have even more in store for us in the next week. But what I will finish off with is this race, because this is the end of my talking about the Australian Grand Prix, this race, I hope, was a slight window into what we might be seeing, but I hope that Ferrari is going to figure out their strategy, because for the Tifosi, for you Ferrari fans, I am praying that you will have good strategy for these upcoming races, because the only way you guys will beat Mercedes, the only way Ferrari will beat Mercedes, is with exceptional strategy and a crazy drive. And also possibly a track that favors their car. But in these fast, straight tracks, it's going to be Mercedes all day. Okay, and now we go to Sector 3. Oh, no. Oh, shoot. I was not connected to the right thing. One moment, ladies and gentlemen. As we connect to PowerPoint. Where's PowerPoint? Haha! The Chinese predictions. I think I labeled it Bahrain. Oop. Regardless, Chinese predictions. As I restart this. So, they are going to be going into Shanghai, driving the Chinese Grand Prix. Last year's Chinese Grand Prix was a little bit traumatic, as both Ferraris got disqualified for their planks being too thin. But, as you can see from this track, there are a lot of long straights. And you want to know what happened in long straights at Albert Park? Cars died at the end of them, and it wasn't as flat out. And it's going to be really sad to see on that Sector 3 speed trap. You see it right there. Those cars are going to die by the end of it. There is no way they have enough energy for that. But let's get into these predictions. First thing I have, my prediction for disaster class. Who do I think is going to perform poorly? Who do I think is going to have one of their worst drives? Maybe just perform poorly. Who do I think is going to have a disaster class? Gabriele Bortoleto. I sung Gabriele Bortoleto's praises in Sector 1. I was talking about how great I think he did. But what I will say is that what goes up must come down. And I question Audi's reliability, because Audi had a couple of times where his car died on him. Hülkenberg car died on him. And I don't see a world in which he is able to avoid that bug permanently. I think there might be moments where we see Gabriele Bortoleto not necessarily succeed the way he should. And I think this could be a disaster class for Gabriele Bortoleto. I think he might DNF. I also think that he has performed less than stellar here at the Chinese Grand Prix. Last year, obviously, he was driving one of the worst cars in the grid, and he was younger, but he was outperformed, outqualified by Hülkenberg. And I think that in this track, it doesn't necessarily favor his skill set. And I think we are going to see a disaster class from Gabriele Bortoleto. I am sad to say, because I love Gabby, and he has been a fantastic driver, and he's a fun addition to the grid. I think he's going to be exceptional, and if Audi can continue to give him a car, I think he could be up there in the future. Next up is Masterclass. Who do I think is going to just absolutely outperform themselves, absolutely succeed from first to second to third? Where do I think they're going to finish? Who do I think is going to put it in where they normally wouldn't? Who do I think is going to be able to perform and outperform their previous successes? Esteban Ocon. Now, people might be wondering, hey, Michael, why'd you pick Esteban Ocon as your masterclass? I am picking Esteban Ocon as my masterclass because I believe that he is going to succeed. Last year, he put it in P5. Obviously, it was P7 before the disqualifications of the Ferraris, but I believe Esteban Ocon is going to have a masterclass here. He performed a little less than stellar at Albert Park. He was outperformed by his younger teammate, Ali Behrman, but Esteban Ocon has shown that he can extract a lot of the Haas here in China. And I think that if he's going to be able to drive a clean race, do a better job in qualifying, I think if anyone could have a masterclass, it's going to be Esteban Ocon. I think Ali Behrman is still considerably the better driver and is going to continue to outperform. But I think if somebody's going to exceed expectations here in China, it is going to be Esteban Ocon. Next up, I have points surprise. Who do I think of those middle pack teams that is not from VCARB? Or it might be from VCARB. I don't remember. Who do I think is going to finish in the points? Who do I think is going to be the one that kind of elevates themselves to get some championship points for their team and succeed. And this is a driver who had a really rough last race. And that's Carlos Sainz. Now you might be wondering, Michael, again, why did you pick Carlos Sainz for your point surprise? Well, one, it would be a surprise if he got points because Williams did not perform well. And Carlos didn't even perform well at last year's Chinese Grand Prix. But with brand new regs, everything seems to be out the window, and I think Carlos might be able to extract the car. If he can get a weekend where he does not have the car die on him in FP3, where he doesn't even get the chance to qualify, because that's the thing, is looking at, well, he didn't perform well in Australia. He didn't even have a chance to qualify. He didn't even get a chance to put himself in that higher echelon. Sure, he might have finished around Q2 or around a similar spot. He never got the opportunity to because he didn't even get to qualify. I think if anyone is going to be able to notch it in the points, get that 10, get that 9 spot, it's going to be the Carlos Sainz Jr. Next up, I have first lap hero. Who do I think might have a questionable for qualifying and be able to just leap themselves in the race and in race pace? Arvid Lindblad. He showed it off in that first race as he started in P9, climbed his way up to P3, and I think China is a difficult track, and it's going to be a hard one, and I think that Arvid might not qualify as highly in this next race, but I think he has shown that he is exceptional with these new starts, and I think he could really, truly launch himself into a high level here in China. I think that he is going to perform exceptionally. He is continuing to show that he is like that as a rookie. Obviously, he is the only true rookie. Obviously, Franco Colapinto is listed as a rookie, but he is not a rookie. But even then, Arvid Lindblad is showing that he is more like that than Franco Colapinto. So I do have him as my first lap hero. I think he's going to climb the ranks. I think he's going to work his way up, and I think he's going to notch it in the points again. I think Arvid Lindblad has a very good car on him in the V-Carb, and I think that he's going to continue to show success and show that kind of swagger that we're seeing from the young driver. Now my first lap zero. This is a new category, obviously, because as I was talking through it, it is a new category that is meant to be kind of, who drops like a rock in terms of position. We saw the first lap zero last week, which was Liam Lawson. And I didn't predict this one because I thought about it after the fact. I was like, that's a really good category. So who do I have as my first lap zero? Who do I think might have a great qualifying, but then a terrible start? Where's my button? Franco Colapinto. Franco Colapinto had a decent start last week. He was able to kind of maneuver himself around Liam Lawson, almost crashing into the back of him, and was able to protect himself and keep himself safe, which was spectacular. However, the Alpine has shown some pace. And I think Franco Colapinto, I sneakily think he might put his car up in a higher position, maybe a P12, P13 in qualifying. I think he could possibly do that. And if he does that, what we are going to see is Franco Colapinto drop like a rock into this Grand Prix. I think he's going to drop like a rock. I don't think he's going to succeed very well. I think his car might stall, might not even start, and he's going to drop in the rankings, and he is going to be my first lap zero. I wish no ill will on him. I pray that he stays safe, but I do think he is going to be the first lap zero. Team of the week. Who do I think is going to score the most points? I believe I did this when I said I wanted to see who scored the most points. And I picked Red Bull. I forgot about this. Of the teams I think are going to outperform their typical, I put Red Bull. And why do I think that? Well, Red Bull just had a stinker of a race. They started with Max Verstappen crashing in qualifying, maybe absolutely grinding his way to 6th, and as Isaac Hadjar losing his car under him during the race. I think the Red Bull has pace. I do. And I think that there's a chance that they will outperform themselves this week. And you know what? Right here, right now, I'm changing my own rules. Team of the week is the team that scores, I believe, will score more points than they scored the previous weekend in the next weekend. So you could have a team of the week be, I think V-Carb is going to outscore themselves significantly. But in this case, Red Bull, I believe, scored only like 8 or 10 championship points. I think they're going to score much more this next week because I think Isaac Hadjar is going to finish the race, and I think Max Verstappen is going to once again show why he is currently the best and most talented driver on the grid. Not the greatest, and not currently the one with the best car, but I think in terms of talent, he is the best driver on the grid. Now, pole position. Yeah, Michael, we know who's pole position. Oh, it's going to be George Russell, right? No, you're incorrect. It's not going to be George Russell. It is, however, going to be his Mercedes teammate, Kimi Antonelli. I think Kimi Antonelli is going to put it in first, and I think he's going to out-qualify his teammate George Russell in the Chinese Grand Prix. Why do I say this? Well, sure, George has been driving clean, but Kimi has pure pace, and Kimi sure was able to put it on in second, but he had a car that had just been repaired, not even 10 weeks ago. I think Kimi is gonna have a clean FP1, clean FP2, clean FP3, and I think he's gonna be able to put it on pole, and we're gonna see a Kimi Antonelli masterclass. Obviously, I didn't put him as masterclass. Who did I put as masterclass? I'm forgetting who I put as masterclass. Esteban Ocon. I think Kimi is going to have a fantastic race. I think he's gonna put himself to tie with George Russell, possibly, in the driver's standings. So I think Kimi Antonelli is going to be my pole position, and who knows? Maybe he surprises some people. But I think Kimi Antonelli has so much talent, is such a spectacular driver, and he has shown so much resilience after that moment that I think more and more I'm going to say I will root for Kimi Antonelli because this guy is like that, and I want him to beat out George. I think this is George's championship to lose, but if anyone can make him lose it, it's going to be that man, Kimi Antonelli. Now my podium lock. Who do I think is going to finish P1, P2, and P3? For P3, I contemplated. I postulated. I predicted. I thought, who do I think is going to look? I looked into the future. I don't actually look into the future. But with all that I could say, after I ruminated on it, after I pontificated, I could deduce that P3 is going to be Sir Lewis Hamilton. And you might ask, why do you think Sir Lewis Hamilton is going to finish P3? Well, Lewis even said that he thinks there was more in the car in qualifying, meaning that I think he's going to finish higher than P7. I think he'll probably qualify P3, P4. Knowing the way the pace has been, I know that Lewis is probably going to be in there. Also, Lewis, though didn't have a great year in previous years, he is exceptional around China as a driver in general. He has performed well in the past. And I think that Lewis is going to be able to put himself on the podium because I think he's going to finally call his own strategy. Honestly, I think he's going to be like, Ferrari, this is what we're doing. He's going to tell them, hey, box me this next lap, because he has shown that he needs to show that leadership. And Ferrari even said, hey, why didn't you say anything in the last race? And Lewis said, cool, that was all he needed to know. He is going to be the one talking to them and telling them, hey, this is what I think we should be doing. But that's Lewis Hamilton. That's who I think is going to finish P3. I think he's going to beat out his teammate, and he's going to get his first podium for Ferrari and for the Tifosi. Next up, P2. Who do I think is going to be it? Mr. Pretty Boy himself, George Russell. I think George Russell is going to finish P2. You guys can probably assume who I think is going to finish P1, but I think George Russell is going to finish P2. I think he's going to get outperformed by his teammate. I think that this is going to be a race where we are going to see Kimi Antonelli notch his first victory in Formula One. I think that this is one of those moments where we are going to see a exceptional drive from Kimi Antonelli. Kimi Antonelli knows there's a car under him, and I think that if he is able to, one, have a good start, two, puts it on pole, he has all of the tools in the toolbox to be able to take off and just rip it. And if he can build a good enough gap, a sizable enough gap early on, there is a chance that Kimi Antonelli wins this race. And I do believe in Kimi Antonelli. If not this race, Kimi Antonelli will win a race this season. Mark my words, he's going to notch his first race win. But I think he's going to have more than that. I think he is going to compete with George for the World Championship. Because Toto will let them fight. We know that. Toto Wolff was the team principal back when Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton were duking it out shot for shot. And if anyone is going to let these guys go, let these guys take the gloves off and just absolutely go after it, it's going to be Toto Wolff. And I think Kimi Antonelli in China is going to come out on top. There might be some help from, say, a Lewis Hamilton who defends a little bit longer, or a Charles Leclerc or Max Verstappen. I think some other cars are going to get in the mix early on in the race, and we're going to see Kimi build a gap, and he's going to just need to keep it in gear and maintain it. So that's my picks for the podium lock here in China. Now, China is going to be an interesting race. I'm going to bring myself back over to the full shot so you guys can still see the timer. But China is going to be a little bit interesting because we are going to be seeing a different timing because it is obviously in China. In terms of the race is going to be at 2 a.m. Central Standard Time, so midnight for my friends over in Arizona and the Pacific. You Eastern folks, you got a 3 a.m. race. This is going to either be a really late night or a really early morning for you. But we do have a sprint race and sprint qualifying, and I just forgot about that. So the predictions, sprint qualifying, I think that pole position is going to be, I don't know, George Russell. I think that the sprint race winner is going to be, again, George Russell, and then I think Kimi is going to win the other stuff. So that is my predictions for those because I forgot that we had a sprint race this week, which is going to be fun. That's also at 10 p.m., so that'll be a little bit earlier, so you can still get some Z's before you, of course, have the race on March 15th at 2 a.m. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching Track Time. It's been an absolute pleasure. I am so excited to see you guys next time here on Track Time. Good evening, good night, and God bless.